Good evening. Now, the story of the RBI has a new development. Shaktikanta has been appointed as the 25th governor of the RBI, and he takes over as the RBI goes through what can only be described as the worst rift between Finance Ministry and RBI Governor in the history of the RBI. Now, the opposition, mainly the Congress, has questioned the appointment of Shaktikanta on two counts. Firstly, they allege that Das is not qualified. Secondly, they allege the new governor is the trusted hand of the government of the day and will do its bidding, thereby compromising the autonomy of the institution.
It's unfortunate that a bureaucrat who supported demonetization has been anointed to that post. The consequences of that are going to be that a bureaucrat who has no real great knowledge and who's not a known economist in the world or even in India will obviously listen to the tune of the Pied Piper. Our fear is that this is probably an arrangement through which the reserves of the Reserve Bank of India are going to be taken by the government, because on the board itself, other than government nominees, other than those who support the government, there are no really independent economists that are sitting there. And there is one economist who belongs to the RSS. So you have the RSS and a bureaucrat, and that's a lethal combination.
Well, so let's take a closer look at these two allegations. Now, the opposition's problem with Das is educational qualifications. Now, remember, Shaktikanta Das is a BA, MA in history, unlike his two predecessors who were career economists, both Patel and before him, Raghuram Rajan. Now, the last IAS officer who was appointed to the RBI as chairman was Dr. D. Subbarao. Now, although he was an IAS officer, he was also held a PhD in economics, just like the governor before him, Dr. Y.V. Reddy. Das is served, though, as secretary in the Ministry of Finance, in the Ministry of Revenue and the Economic Affairs Department, which makes him a very senior bureaucrat with considerable experience in matters of finance. But here's the clincher, and here's the most important thing. There is no specified eligibility criteria for the appointment of the RBI governor. Now, according to the RBI Act, the appointment needs to be recommended by the finance minister and approved by the Prime Minister's office. And according to that rule, Das's appointment fulfills that criteria. So now let's take a look at the second problem the opposition has raised. And that has to do with the fact that they believe that Das will do the government's bidding and thereby hurt the autonomy of the RBI. But there's no evidence as of now to suggest that Das will not be anything other than the tough-as-nails public service officer he's been so far. In fact, what the opposition is referring to is his management of demonetization. Most of us will remember him as the man who addressed a multitude of press conferences on behalf of the government during the period of demonetization. He was the main government officer who led the demonetization exercise. In fact, he was chosen as one of the few people in the country who knew about demonetization before it happened. Now, the new RBI governor has some important work to do. To begin with, he needs to normalize the relationship between the Finance Ministry and the RBI. But more importantly, he will need to manage the balance of regulating weak banks and listening to the industry's demand of fresh loans. And the biggest decision will be that of parting with the RBI's reserves and giving it to the government. That was largely the flashpoint between the finance minister and Urjit Patel before Urjit Patel decided to resign. In fact, I want to remind you, just 2 days ago, reacting to that resignation, former Prime Minister, former Finance Minister and former RBI Governor Manmohan Singh, in a statement said this, and I quote, he said, "There have been apprehensions expressed by the Deputy Governor of the RBI about the government's intent to raid capital reserves for the fiscal purposes. I hope the resignation of the Governor is not a sign that this may soon become a reality." Now, Mr. Das, who addressed his first press conference as RBI Governor today, did not offer the media any clue on how he would decide on all of these matters or even what his personal views were. But the Finance Minister, Arun Jaitley, was in no mood to humour the opposition's concerns. He backed the appointment of Shaktikanta Das and said this.
I think he has the right credentials. He has been extremely professional, has worked under various governments and has excelled himself. And I'm sure in meeting the challenges before India's economy as a governor of the Reserve Bank, he'll certainly add to that office. The government of India strongly believes that the Reserve Bank is an independent and an autonomous body. It's a highly professional body in its own field, and the government will fully support the Reserve Bank of India and coordinate with it in various areas where consultations with government are required to make sure that India's economy benefits the best from both governmental policy decisions as also as those areas which fall within the domain of the Reserve Bank.
So here's the question. Are the opposition's concerns about Shaktikanta Das valid, or should Mr. Das be just given some room to begin working? That's the question we're debating this evening. Joining me on the show, Vivek Reddy, spokesperson of the BJP, Mohammad Khan for the Congress, Sagatha Ghosh, associate editor of the Economic Times, will join us shortly, Mohan Guruswamy, senior economist and chairperson for the Centre of Policy Alternatives, Santosh Mehrotra, professor of economics at JNU, and Sunil Alag, founder of SKA Advisors. I beg your pardon. I welcome all of you to this conversation. Mohammad Khan, I'm going to start with you. I don't know if you just heard, the story that I read out, but are these the fundamental concerns of the Congress? If we start with the first point of the education of Shaktikanta Das, as per the RBI Act, there's no specification that he has to be a career economist.
Yes, you're right. But to answer this question, I will ask for 30 seconds. First, we cannot rob the situation of context, Faye. Let us not forget that it is one of those rare, unprecedented times when the RBI Governor has had to quit in protest. As Raghuram Saab said, it is a form of protest with regard to the circumstances he is faced with. This is no small message being sent out. We know for a fact that the RBI's autonomy is under threat. Now, when a RBI governor like Mr. Das is appointed, we have to scrutinize his qualifications for the post. We know that the government this time is not looking for someone who's credentialed and qualified. Rather, they are looking, and we would be forgiven for thinking so, a pliant officer who would not protest too much. They need someone who wouldn't create too many waves. Now, let's come to Mr. Das's educational background. There have been civil servants who have been RBI governors in the past, most notably Mr. Subba Rao and Mr. Bimal Jalan. But I would also point out to you that both of those individuals were highly credentialed when it came to the study of economics. In fact, Subba Rao Saab went to MIT to study applied economic mathematics or something of that sort. And he had a PhD in economics from Andhra University thereafter. Bimal Jalan Saab held the prestigious post of the director of the NCAER, the National Council for Applied Economic Research. They were men with a firm grasp on monetary policy. Mr. Das, I'm certain he's a wonderful human being, but he clearly seems unequipped for the task ahead of him. Unfortunately, his stalwart and zealous defense of demonetization, the fact that he stood there, looked the public in the eye, and continued to defend this scam of a policy which is now taught as a cautionary tale across the world, does not do him any favors. So yes, we as the opposition will ask this question when the RBI is going through an unprecedented crisis.
Well, a quick clarification, Mohammad Khan. The fact that he served as Secretary of Revenue, Economic Affairs, Finance in the Government of India, does that not give you any comfort that he has dealt with these matters in his entire career?
No, no, Faye, it doesn't. Because unfortunately, this post requires someone who is a little removed from the system as well. And we believe that someone who would have been outside the system, especially given this government's degree for control over its officers, would have been a better choice, especially given the crisis that the RBI is facing right now.
All right, Vivek Reddy of the BJP joins us as well. Vivek Reddy, do you want to rebut what Mohammad Khan is suggesting? He's suggesting that the government picked a hand puppet so that they can control the RBI. What's your rebuttal?
Well, I think, yes. Faye, I think Mohammad Khan is reading too much into small issues or misleading the issues. The reason is this. First of all,
small issues, really?
The partially quoting Mr. Shaktikanta Das's educational qualification is not the right thing. I think we owe a responsibility to quote it fully. So, Mr. Shaktikanta Das is not just a MA in history. He also has an advanced financial management course in no lesser reputed institution than Indian Institute of Management. He is an IAS officer. Now, Mohammad Khan says that you must have an IAS officer. There have been IAS officers. Mr. Shaktikanta Das also is an IAS officer.
Das, please.
He has enough exposure to both academic economics and Shaktikanta Das, both to academic economics and to applied economics, which is as he served as the finance secretary. Now, what problem does the Congress have with this?
Yes.
Because he is a person who is most suited, most qualified, and has the capacity. The second issue is, therefore, Faye, you have to look at it from a different perspective. Why is Congress misleading the issue? Why is Congress showing the wrong route? Because the whole Congress plank, its whole campaign plank, is based on lies and falsities. Deceit is the basis. Therefore, they say, look here, I don't want to quote the entire educational qualification. I'll quote only MA in history, and I will say, look here, he does not have qualification. Is it so impossible for people not to know that he has an advanced economic course?
No, so tell me something. The reason, and I'll be completely honest, Vivek Reddy, the reason why I didn't quote the advanced course in financial management is I don't understand. Is this a degree? Would this be a master's degree, or is it a diploma? What was the nature and the duration of this course?
It was no less an institution than It is no less an institution than the Indian Institute of Management, which is one of the most reputed and highest institutions of academic excellence in the whole of India and in the whole of Asia. This is one. Second is that he applied all this as a finance secretary. And
I understand all of that, and I completely agree with you that he's applied all of that in various ministries. But you didn't answer my question of the nature of the course that you're referring to. Is it a diploma? Is it a degree? Is it a short-term course, long-term course? Would you be able to tell us what kind of course we're talking about?
Well, I don't have those details right now, but the fact is that he has that degree, he has that qualification. Now, the second issue is on demonetization. Now, here is the statement again. Here is where the Congress's stance becomes misleading, position becomes misleading, because what is wrong if a person is associated with demonetization? Demonetization was supposed to be a financial measure which was supposed to give a big boost to the economy of this country over a period of, it was a macroeconomic tectonic shift in macroeconomics, and it was expected to yield results over some period of time, and it is yielding results. It is at its infant stages now.
Well,
we cannot call it is too close now to say demonetization has failed or demonetization has succeeded, but the fact is that demonetization is on the success path. It is a success story.
No, I like your careful use of the word supposed to, Vivek Reddy. You said demonetization was supposed to do this and supposed to do that. So, interesting. But we won't argue on the merits of demonetization right now. I want to stay with the topic that we're discussing.
It has done.
Okay. No. That's a separate debate, and it would take up far too much time. But let me bring in all of my panelists, please, if I may. Mohan Guruswamy, the last time. Mohan Guruswamy.
We are at the infant stages.
Yes, it's been 2 years. It's hardly infant stages anymore. But Mohan Guruswamy, the last time we spoke when the RBI governor had just quit, you said whomsoever the government appoints as his successor will give us a clue as to what the government's intentions are. Now that we know who the government has appointed, what are you reading into this?
My reading is very clear. The government wants to take active control of the RBI. Because the RBI, sits on a mountain of cash, which it holds as its reserves. The government wants to dig into that, and it wants an RBI which is supine, which agrees to everything it says. And we have seen that it has problems with independent-minded RBI governors who are qualified in economics and who have earned their credentials in the big world outside. Rather than, they've got this man who among his brilliant ideas was that people going to take currency from banks should have their forefingers ink marked like elections, So this is the kind of background he brings to this job. And, a financial management course in any institute, however reputed it is. I've also done these courses in very reputed institutions. They're short courses. They're for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And, it doesn't qualify you to run the job. This calls for a lifetime of experience and knowledge of global financial markets and Indian financial markets. So, you're making a mockery of it. It's like, somebody is saying that I went to Yale for a week and I'm Yale qualified now. No, that kind of thing doesn't work here. And I think very clearly they've had very small bench strength left. Look at the kind of economic advisors they've got anyway. And, so they picked up somebody who's reliable, known to them, and who will listen to them. And this appears so, but people always change on their jobs. I think we've seen Subbarao being sent in by by Chidambaram, but Subbarao cut an independent swath for himself. He took tough positions, and when you sit on that as the institutional head of that institution, you might start thinking differently. So there is always hope for Shaktikanta Das. He might find the spurs, but I'm afraid he doesn't have the technical qualifications for the job.
Okay, so Saugata Ghosh joins us right now. Saugata is the associate editor of the Economic Times, very senior journalist who's tracked the RBI for several years. Saugata, what is your reaction to the opposition's criticism and some criticism from other economists as well about the qualification of Mr. Shaktikanta Das to be RBI Governor? One, his education qualification and the experience that he has.
Well, it's a little odd that post-liberalization there hasn't been any governor who is not a trained economist or who at least has not done a PhD in economics. So that's something which people will point out, because it's an open economy. It's not the 80s or 90s where markets and interest rates were all regulated and RBI governor's job was more of an administrative job. But here I think Shaktikanta Das would be depending on his experience in the finance ministry, which he believes has prepared him for this job. So whether he has to depend hugely on RBI officials, because even if he knows the fiscal side, the budget preparation, monetary policy is a very different ball game, and there he has to depend on the RBI officials for the inputs.
Exactly.
And Saugata, the second criticism that he's come under, because he endorsed or he was part of the management of the demonetization process, the fact that the Congress seems to believe that one, that he would be sort of the hand puppet of the government, he would allow the government to quote-unquote raid the RBI reserves, and he would do whatever he was asked to do by the government and the finance ministry. Do you think that those concerns are valid?
Well, it would be a little unfair to the person who has just joined.
Yes.
As a senior IAS officer, he had no choice but to endorse it, and had to. He was left holding the baby. I remember every day during demonetization in the morning, he has to come and take the flag from the press. But he was just taking the flag on behalf of the government. As a senior Babu, he had to do that. Now, the coming few months will show that whether he has come with a specific mandate to carry out what the government intends to do, or he wants to do a serious job.
Right. He also, Saugata, he addressed a press conference.
How he pushes the agenda is also very important.
Yes, he addressed a press conference today, and
but he didn't say much.
He didn't say much. Let me just play out one or two
Faye,
bites.
I'll tell you something.
Yes,
how he pushes the agenda.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that how he pushes the agenda is very important.
In fact, Saugata, let me just play out, Shaktikanta Das' bite number 3. This is when journalists were pressing him and asking him, so what do you feel about the issue of reserves? What do you feel about the issue of inflation? What do you feel about the issue of interest rates? How will you decide? These were largely his comments. Can we just play out those bites back to back, please?
My personal views on these matters, on these things would not matter. What I have to really see and understand issues before I start commenting, because every observation made by the central bank has got, a lot of wide-ranging impact. So let me understand the issue. Every institution, every institution has to have its professional integrity, maintain its professional autonomy. At the same time, every institution also must adhere to principles of accountability. We have to have stakeholder consultation. We'll have to have consultation with everybody. Government is ultimately the government has an government is not just a stakeholder, but the government of the day runs the economy, runs the country, and manages major policy decisions. So that there has to be free, fair, objective, and very frank discussion with between the government and the Reserve Bank of India. And I would like to believe that all issues, I would like to believe that all issues, howsoever contentious, can be resolved through discussions.
All right, so those are the comments he made. He didn't give too much away, but I have two more panelists who haven't spoken. Let me start with Santosh Mehrotra, Professor of Economics. Professor Mehrotra, what is your response, let's say, to the press conference that you just heard out? And these were the comments that were made by the new RBI governor. He did, of course, seem a little, he stuttered a little bit when it came to the relationship between RBI and government. He said the government is a stakeholder, but it still makes all of the decisions. There must be conversation between the two. But what's your response to that press conference?
Not much. He was making the right noises, which he's expected to do. What more do you expect me to say? He said what he was expected of him to say.
No, but Professor Mehrotra, okay, so let me ask...
If you're asking me a substantive question, I can tell you...
Okay, so let me change the question then, Professor Mehrotra. The question is then this: do you also feel that he's not qualified for the job, or he's underqualified for the job, and do you feel he's been placed there for a reason?
Yes, he's been placed there for a reason. All IAS officers are generalists. Bar none, every IAS officer is a generalist. I have worked for the government in the rank of Secretary to the Government of India as a specialist. I was brought in as a lateral entry, and I know how generalists are. So that's point one. Yes, of course, you've underlined that point by talking about his history degree, some coursework he might have undertaken, and that's in finance. Now, the point is, if he has done some financial management in the Ministry of Finance, it's related to fiscal policy. What is the job of the Reserve Bank or the Central Bank of any country? One, it is to manage the external exchange rate of the country. Two, its job is to manage the monetary policy of the country. He has no experience and no prior understanding of these subjects. That's the point, I think, that everyone is trying to make. This is point one I want you to appreciate. I think point two that has to be appreciated is the context in which he has been appointed. A professional RBI governor has resigned, and a generalist IAS officer has been appointed in his place from the Ministry of Finance. At the same time, just 2 weeks ago, a chief economic advisor to the Government of India was appointed when a professional economist had resigned early, and a chief economic advisor has been appointed who had written articles lauding the demonetization. So here is the governor of the Reserve Bank now appointed who was managing everything for the demonetization, one of the worst decisions in the history of independent India. And you have a chief economic advisor to the Ministry of Finance who has just been appointed against very stiff competition, I understand, who has been lauding the demonetization. I think the writing is on the wall. The next 6 months that this government is still in power, we will see that practically RBI will end up being seen as a department of the Ministry of Finance.
Hello? All right, I see that Vivek Reddy has a rebuttal. As soon as Vivek Reddy, go ahead with your rebuttal, and then I'll ask Sunil Alag to make his opening statement. Go ahead, Vivek Reddy.
Yeah, I think, yes, I think, Faye, what the immediate panelist said, he is a IAS officer, retired officer. With all due respect to him, first of all, being the finance secretary of this country, he's not managing some small financial management of a family or a bank or a cluster of banks. It is the financial management of a nation called India. And it has its deep impact in the role this RBI governor plays. Therefore, it is a pivotal position and a great credential, believe me. There can't be a better credential for a man than for a man to be a finance secretary to head this job. This is one. Second thing is the concerns expressed. Concerns that, some panelists expressed that he won't take tough decisions, then he will not, the government wants to take control of the economy. I think we need to remember one thing, Faye. The architecture of the RBI Act puts this in perspective. The RBI Act says very clearly that government is a big stakeholder. That is the impression that you get when you read the RBI Act. The object of the RBI Act was that there is synchrony between the RBI and the government. Therefore, Parliament plays Section 7 powers. Section power was not intended to be a taboo, but they had these powers. Now, nobody has implemented Section 7, but those powers were there, which means to show that government is a big stakeholder here. The autonomy is the question that comes in place. Yes, it has to have autonomy, and that autonomy will be there. And government does not use Section 7, though the Allahabad High Court has said use Section 7. The government has not used it.
No, hang on, Vivek Reddy.
What impression that we get is that if there is more synchronization, just let me complete, Faye. Just let me complete. I'm just in a small point. If people are saying that this is the government is out here to get RBI, no. If there is more synchronization between RBI and the government, and if there is good public interest served out of this, if some liquidity can be infused, and if the MSMEs, which contribute to 50% of this nation's GDP, if those micro and small scale industries can get boosters out of this moves of synchronization, in accordance with law and in accordance with the RBI architecture, why not? Why shouldn't it happen? Shouldn't we be looking at the great benefits, the windfalls of benefits and advantages that arises by RBI?
Okay, all right. So let me offer. Hang on, Vivek Reddy. You said infuse some liquidity to the MSMEs. Now, this is exactly the point that the RBI governor, the former RBI governor and the finance minister were arguing about. So are you saying that this synchrony that you're referring to should be achieved by standing on the neck of the institution and forcing a governor out and bringing a new one in just to achieve the so-called synchrony? How is that synchrony at all? But what? Allow Santosh Mehrotra to make a rebuttal, please.
You raised a very good question.
One second. Santosh Mehrotra, go ahead, please. Very quickly, so I can bring in Sunil Lala.
You raised a very good question.
If the concerns, Mr. Reddy, Faye has already given you a chance. Mr. Reddy, may I? Faye has given the floor to me.
Yes, Professor, go ahead, please.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you, very kind of you. The point here, sir, is that MSMEs were the ones which were most affected by the demonetization. Was the RBI telling the Ministry of Finance to carry out the demonetization? The demonetization has adversely affected the informal sector, the unorganized sector, and the MSMEs, which account for, as you rightly pointed out, half of the GDP and most of the non-agricultural employment in the economy. So first you attack the basis, the government's action attacks the basis of the MSMEs, and then you say, oh, we have to move money into the MSMEs. But what about the Mudra loans? Weren't the Mudra loans all going into the MSMEs and to the individual borrowers, the small borrowers? So, I mean, what is your argument? I don't understand. Why attack first and then say, oh, we need the reserves of the RBI, which is, by the way, one of the most undercapitalized, which has one of the lowest reserves of any central bank of the world at 7% of its total assets. And we are a developing country. You know, Bank of England, the Bundesbank, the Federal Reserve, the US have larger reserve assets than we do. What do you want? Do you want a situation where, you know, the Reserve Bank is not able to come in when there is a crisis in the banking system? Already the government of India is trying to undermine the prompt corrective action that the previous Reserve Bank of India governor was taking.
Professor Mehrotra's argument, is that the Reserve Bank of India needs to step in when it sees that something is wrong. That's what a banking regulator does. Do we want a system where the government intervenes every time the Reserve Bank of India is disciplining banks? Sunil Alag hasn't spoken yet. Mr. Alag, your opening statement and a reaction to any of the comments that have been made so far, if you please.
you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not qualified to be on this panel because I'm not an economist, but I've done my BA in economic honors. So, I mean, from that point of view, you can even say I'm the wrong panelist to have. I will, after I make my remarks, I have to move out because I'm on your ET now, and hopefully they've got the panel where I will be respected. I did that. I did the MBA in IIM Calcutta, but that's not an economic degree. I just did economic honors.
Well,
See,
technically,
as far as we are concerned, Mr.
Alag, you don't need to qualify for RBI Governor to be on this panel. You are welcome, and your views are what we hold important. So go ahead, please.
No. But I'm just, I'm qualifying myself on this panel. On this panel, I'm qualifying myself.
Yes, please go ahead.
Because everybody is an economist here. But all I'm saying is that, look, but all I'm saying is that first, being an MA in history, on a lighter note, maybe he will not allow history to repeat itself. So that's one big qualification for him. But on a more serious note, look, I know Shaktikanta Das personally when he was in the finance ministry. He's handled the same portfolios in Tamil Nadu when he was there. He's moved in, and to say he has no experience of finance and therefore nothing qualifies him is perhaps, from my point of view, the most ridiculous assessment to make. He was, no matter who you appointed today, the opposition was going to say the government has appointed. Even if they got a PhD in economics, they would have said, oh, he's a puppet and he's going to do something. So that's the way the opposition is going to behave. But look, you're not even giving him a chance. All he said in the interviews, in the media interview today was, look, I've just arrived. Give me an opportunity before I even get down to saying anything, because if I say something wrong on my very first day, it's going to be a massive statement coming from the RBI governor. And I think that's the most natural thing to expect. Look, he is the best guy to bring about sanity in a chaotic situation. I have seen him do it. Dr. Urjit Patel also supported demonetization. Did we jump up and down at that time? No, because all I'm saying is that, look, he is about time that no, he didn't. He didn't object. Please, he started only in the end when he was under.
The press
when it came in, he was very much part of the demonetization.
No, you said, did we jump up and down at that time? I said, yes, we did.
The press can say whatever they like. I'm saying, did Urjit Patel come out and say anything against demonetization? He didn't. That's all I'm making. I'm making a factual statement, and then I'm going to get up. So nobody jumped up and down. Now they are blaming Shaktikanta Das for being part of the demonetization. So was Urjit Patel. Now, nobody had to say anything then. All I'm saying is, this man is a guy of consensus. He's a guy who is the best individual to have today in this chaotic situation. We have to give him a chance. If in the next 2 to 3 months he allows it to be raided and everything else, you can have another panel discussion on what he's doing. But to anticipate and to kill the guy before he's even started, that's what your panel is doing, and I'm totally against it.
That's
he is
a very
the best
fair point.
choice that you could have chosen. Industry is very happy that he's chosen. Let me tell you, because he is open. You can meet him, you can discuss, you can talk. You don't go into hiding like Dr. Urjit Patel, who was not open to anyone. So from a theoretical person, we are going into a practical person, and that's the best person you could get today. And as far as I'm concerned, he deserves to be given the full opportunity before we begin attacking him. That's my only simple
That's a very fair point. And before I go back to Mohammad Khan for a rebuttal, Mr. Alag, I just want to point out this is not a panel of economists. We have 2 economists, we have 2 journalists, and 2 politicians who also happen to be lawyers. Other than yourself. But Mohammad Khan, I saw.
That's why I said as a much on a lighter note.
All right, Mohammad Khan, I saw you put your hand up. I know you have a rebuttal. Go ahead, please. Do you want to respond to what Mr. Alag said? Why can't we just give him time to start working and then decide?
Well, Alag Saab makes an argument for civility, and there is merit to that. But Faye, I am surprised that no one has touched upon this. I fear that there may be a great financial crisis brewing. Let us count in backwards orders the number of economists and economic advisors who have quit. Mr. Surjit Bhalla, PM's Economic Advisory Council, Urjit Patel, Arvind Panagriya, Arvind Subramaniam, Raghuram Rajan. It is almost as if these men of learning and virtue do not wish to be associated with what is about to happen. And because they are men of learning and standing,
Arvind
they often don't discuss what transpired during their tenures before the public.
Outside,
we do know from Mr. Arvind Subramaniam.
No, allow him to finish, please, and then I'll let you rebut.
Yes, sir. Please let me complete. Now, we know Mr. Arvind Subramaniam has come out. Mr. Arvind Subramaniam has come out and actually called demonetization a blunder. Now, hindsight is always 20/20, fine, you can argue that. But here is where, and sir, Alag Sab, the reason why this so much debate is taking place, we are on prime time on Mirror now having this debate on this subject because this post attracts great scrutiny. It attracts great scrutiny because of the consequences of the decisions of the man or woman who holds it. So therefore, we will not be wrong to now analyze which way the country is going to go, especially given the crisis we have seen it face over the last 2 weeks and a crisis which prompted an RBI governor to resign. So therefore, I will conclude by saying this. When Mr. Das had the opportunity.
So that is why you have to allow him to work, sir.
Take a stand on the right
Mr.
side
Mohammed Khan, allow him to work. Don't press the panic button even before.
He did not do so. I agree with you that he's an officer and he was bound by certain codes. But imagine how much more confidence we would have had.
I think you have to be fair and allow him to work
stand against
before
demonetization.
falling into all sorts of things.
For 1 second.
All right, gentlemen, you're speaking at the same time. I can't understand you.
Vivek Reddy, to add to what Mehrotra Sahab was saying, you have clearly not seen the Center for Monitoring of Indian Economy's report on jobs. You have not seen Arun Kumar Sahab's work on the subject of demonetization because you are a talent deficit government that is petrified of anyone who challenges your independence, who challenges you in the slightest. You are petrified of autonomous institutions. So I'm sorry, you have no say in this debate and that's why every panelist is questioning.
All right, Mohammed Khan, allow him to respond, please.
Like a normal opposition that, starts like fire for every issue.
30 seconds.
All right, Vivek Reddy, go ahead. Your rebuttal.
Just come in.
Just 1 second, just 1 second, sir. 1 second, before I leave, I'm going to leave the show now.
Unfortunately.
Can I just say...
Okay, all right, 1 second, Vivek Reddy, let Sunil Alagh make a point, please.
They were together. When Beckett became Archbishop of Canterbury, he changed. That's all I'm saying is, remember history, there was King Henry and Becket. They were the best of friends. When Thomas Becket became the Archbishop of Canterbury, he performed for the church. Now, give this man a chance. That's all I'm saying. Don't kill him before he even starts. And then, sorry, I'm leaving now because I've got to be on ET now. And I just want a 5-minute break. But I think I've just said, give the man a chance. He's the best guy today.
Okay.
Bring about
You've made that point.
in a chaotic situation.
Let me bring in...
That's all that I want to make. Okay.
Yes. Okay, Vivek Reddy, I interrupted you. Go ahead, please. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yes, Faye, I think Sunil Lalla puts the perspective correctly. You have to give him a chance. And Mr. Sunil Lalla, no other than Mr. Sunil Lalla, stands by his credentials and says there is immense experience. So, Mohammed Khan, how can you say that this immense experience as Financial Secretary and doing the same job as Tamil Nadu Secretary will not help this nation? You have to look at it positively. Look, you said it is a serious position. Therefore, even opposition has to behave with some gravity. The opposition has to behave with some temperament, has to temper its reactions. You can't just simply fly off the handle, sir, without giving him an opportunity. All that you say, that so many people have said so many things. Well, demonetization, it is too early to comment on demonetization. But here is a person who can bring everyone to the table, who can set the consultation process going, who can ensure that this bank is autonomous, who can answer every other issue that is now stares at this country.
Okay, all right. So Vivek Reddy, the only... Okay, gentlemen, 1 second.
Potential. By your speech.
Your arrogance is your biggest enemy and you don't realize that, Vivek.
Okay, all right. So I just want to point out, Vivek Reddy said the opposition can't simply fly off the handle for no reason. I think what politicians in our country have proven, it's the one thing that they do repeatedly is fly off the handle. Okay, Vivek Reddy, I want to bring in Mohan Guruswamy to help our audience understand one thing, Mr. Guruswamy. You've held several positions in government yourself. You've advised the finance ministry and the finance minister in your career. You're also a trained economist. Would you please explain to our audience what the difference is? So here's the argument that he served as Secretary of Finance Ministry and that makes up for his lack of training as an economist. Does it? What is the difference between RBI Governor's job and Secretary Finance Ministry?
Well, Secretary Finance could be anybody. You just have to climb up the bureaucratic ladder. You have to just climb up the bureaucratic ladder because you don't really make macroeconomic policy there. Macroeconomic policy and monetary policy is really shaped by the RBI and the work the RBI does. The RBI's governorship now calls for technical skills. It's like, getting a heart surgeon, a general physician to do heart surgery. You can't do that. There are skills required there, there's knowledge base required there are international connections required there. Being a finance secretary is no longer enough. A person who knows nothing about finance can become finance secretary. That's how the IAS works. But just because a person has been finance secretary for a few months or a few years does not make him qualified for this job. You got to have the aptitude, the interest, and a track record for it. People like Venugopal Reddy and Subbarao also worked in this area, focused on this area. So, mind you, Venugopal Reddy actually went to the Reserve Bank as deputy governor and served for 4 years there before he became governor. So it's not that he made this transition straight from here. But, I'm afraid Mr. Das, on paper at least, lacks those credentials. And let's hope, but to say that give him a chance, let him do the job, a critical time, the patient's in the ICU. You got to do something. You can't say, let's give him a chance for him to experiment out there. This is what worries me. He might come out doing perfectly well. But we don't know. But can this country at this stage, when all indices are going down, Arvind Subramaniam is saying that we are in for a major slowdown, then, can we take chances? Governments are going mad here in this country, writing off debts. I remember Raghuram Rajan was the first RBI governor to step in and say, if you write off a debt, then you put that money into the bank. That's what he told the Andhra government, Telangana government, when it wrote off 40,000 crores. He told the state chief minister, find the money and give it to the banks. But because the RBI is not going to do it. Now, these are things I worry about. A pliant RBI governor might just say, okay, we'll give you the money to write off loans. We'll give you the money to write off NPS. That's not what you need. You need to get the banks to restructure these large companies, and you need somebody who's got the vision and the clarity of mind to do that. And that is what I worry about Mr. Das. His training, his background does not satisfy me as a person who can do that. He might very well do it. Who knows? Like my friend Sunil said that he's like Beckett. He could become like Beckett. He may not become like Beckett. That's the problem.
Yes. So, Saugata Ghosh, the same question to you. The argument that's being put forward by both Sunil Alagh and the representative of the BJP, Vivek Reddy, is that why don't we just give him a chance and then see what happens? So that's one option. The other option is what Mr. Guruswamy is saying is we do not have that legroom right now because things are so dire. Which of the two do you agree with? Okay, we must have some problem with that connection. Saugata, we'll just check your connection and come back to you. Santosh Mehrotra, do you believe that we don't have the room to take a chance or to give an opportunity at this point?
No, of course we don't have the room. What we do know is what the intention of the government is. The intention of the government has been laid out in the last 5 or 6 months in its relations with the RBI, and it became pretty clear in the quite rancorous meeting of the Central Board of Directors of the RBI on the 19th of November. And clearly on the 14th of December there was going to be yet another meeting, and clearly it was Mr. Urjit Patel would have felt humiliated by the decisions that he had to succumb to on the 19th of November, and he wasn't going to put up with yet another a repeat on the 14th of December. And what we will get on the 14th of December is pretty much a repeat of the 19th. If anything, those decisions that were taken on the 19th of November are simply going to be carried forward, because we now have an IAS officer who's less than appropriately placed appointed to hold fort. We know why he's been appointed. There is no debate about this. What's the debate about? I don't know.
Sir. All these are your own presumptions. Please don't be so presumptive.
I'm sure, sir. From your point of view, they are, sir. Of course, they are, sir.
You can't just presume things. How can you presume things?
Okay, all right, hang on.
Okay, wonderful.
Let's keep the conversation civil. 1 second, Vivek Reddy, let me ask specific questions, please.
15th of December.
Please don't carry forward.
Okay, all right, Vivek Reddy, it's not an election campaign. Let me ask you specific questions.
You don't have that position of neutrality to judge this.
All right, Vivek Reddy, let me ask specific questions. Now, the monetary policy, so deciding whether or not interest rates will be held steady or increased or cut down, used to always be the decision of the RBI governor. The government then moved that decision to a committee, a monetary policy committee, which meant that a certain number of people would get together and decide. Post that, the last standoff that happened between the governor and the government, another committee was appointed to as arbiter every time there was a problem or a decision that couldn't be made. They decided instead to take that decision away from the governor and give it to another committee. Now the third problem was when Urjit Patel was told that he would have to run the governance of the RBI through the RBI board, which means that he would then become effectively just a CEO, and there are beliefs that that's the reason why he walked out. Now, if we actually stack all of these things one behind the other, does it suggest that the government has wanted at least a larger say in the decisions of the RBI than it had before it came into power?
Well, Faye, let me tell you one thing. The issues that you have pointed out, assuming these issues exist because it is between the RBI and the government, let us assume that these issues exist. It is in the interest of a healthy democracy and in the interest of proper and adequate and efficient financial management of this country that these issues have to be discussed and debated. It is highly essential. More so because there is no architecture or well-entrenched systems for most of these issues. And the whole decisions were being taken without a systematized form being there.
What is wrong
Therefore,
with
what,
you? All of
what
this is
the
well
government,
laid out.
what the RBI has done.
That is why people
Over
are
one
protesting.
second, let me just allow
It
you
has
to
never
complete so you
happened
can come
before.
in.
The
Hold
sanctity
on,
of the RBI's
don't
reserves is
interrupt.
beyond
Please hear me
reproach.
out.
You
have to
cannot
hear me
decide
out.
how and
Muhammad
when you
Khan,
want to
have
rate
hear me
them.
out.
What
See,
kind of
I'm
foolish
getting
statements
at
are you
this
making?
Okay,
that you
hang
do not
on,
invoke?
hang on.
you
Gentlemen,
don't
if
want
you
the
both shout at the
uncomfortable
same time,
Faye.
nobody can understand what you're saying. Let me just
Faye,
make a
what
point.
the hell is going on?
Yes,
This is not
that's a good
right.
point.
Faye, you have to stop him.
Professor Mehrotra.
This is not right. Allow me to
Faye,
complete. Hear me
how
out.
can you allow
So,
Mr. Reddy
therefore-
to just intervene just like
yes,
this?
if the discussion process is going on, Faye, please allow me to complete. Faye, if the discussion process is going on and there is a healthy discussion between the stakeholder and within the RBI and a subcommittee is appointed to take these things forward, I think there can't be a better position.
Okay,
And
all
the
right, fair
government
enough. So
has
you
done
made your
it
point,
without
Vivek
using
Reddy.
Section 7, and government has requested the RBI to look into these issues. And how can you ever?
Okay, all right. I understood what you're saying. I understood what you're saying, Vivek Reddy.
The second thing is
No. Hang on. I understood what you're saying. I just want to point out, do we have Saugata Ghosh back with us again?
Including Mohammed Khan.
Okay, all right. Are you done? So, do we have Saugata Ghosh with us? I do want to point out that when Governor Raghuram Rajan was the governor of the RBI, he did make a decision to pass on all of the reserves of the RBI every year to the government of India. That was reversed by Urjit Patel, in fact. But let me just give one final word there to Mohan Guruswamy. Mohan Guruswamy, the argument that Vivek Reddy was making is that that the process is being improved by the government. Do you not agree that the process is being improved by the government?
No, the process is being disturbed. By having a supine RBI, by having an RBI in your pocket, does not improve the process. It might improve the process of the government to run havoc with the economy as it has done. If we had a stronger RBI governor at the time of demonetization, maybe he would have said no. But we had somebody who was new and young and who succumbed to the pressure. We've had that one experience. I don't think we are ready to repeat it again and again. I think we've got to put a stop to this and restore RBI its autonomy and its authority in this country's financial management.
Okay.
But to say that, that it acts in synchrony with the government, government might want to do all kinds of aberrant things. We've seen that happen all over the country, in states and in the center. Today the subsidy bills are far in excess of the capital expenditure. So somebody has got to come and say, no, you can't do that anymore.
All right.
And for that you have to have authority, not power, but authority, that when you say something, you're heard.
Okay, so this is where we are right now. The opposition, mainly the Congress, questioning the appointment of Shaktikanta Das to the position of RBI Governor. But Mr. Das has taken over anyway. Today he also addressed a press conference. He did say that he will look towards creating dialogue with the government. He said that he will make sure that the professional integrity of the RBI and its autonomy is looked after, and that he will make sure that he works with the other members and the other staff of the RBI to take decisions that are well informed. Now, we'll keep a close eye on this, and like I keep telling our audience, there is a reason why the RBI has to be strong, why the RBI has to have a very, very strong backbone to push back when necessary from the government. And I'll explain it again if I have to. The government has terms of 5 years, which means that any government, not just this one, previous governments as well, would want to make decisions based on whether or not elections are coming up, whether or not they're based on their political challenges. That's how they would want to make decisions. The RBI, on the other hand, looks at the long-term impact of what those decisions would mean for us as a country and for us as ordinary citizens. Remember, the RBI looks after monetary policy, which means the value of our money, the value of the Indian rupee and what it stands for. And they do it by managing interest rates and inflation and reserves and foreign exchange and regulating our banks, apart from several other very careful things and very careful balances that the RBI needs to maintain. And they do it because when you and I earn our money and we invest in mutual funds, in fixed deposit and homes and take home loans that run for the next 20 years, we need to make sure that short-term decisions made by governments keeping in mind elections are not going to affect the long-term value of our money, which is why the RBI needs to have the ability to push back, or needs to have the strength to push back whenever necessary. That's where all of this comes up. And that is why, that's all I'm saying, that is why this conversation is important to us as regular, ordinary citizens. Even though it might seem a little technical, it's something we should understand and we should appreciate. Which is why we'll continue to take a look at this as it moves forward. And as the new RBI Governor takes charge, we wish him very, very good luck here at Mirror Now. He's got his work cut out for him. It's not going to be an easy job. Thanks for watching.